Action.
Hey, come in. While you're coming in, listen to this because it's getting ready to set up our night.
So deep I can't seem to get it right. Lonely, I'm sleeping in bed at night.
Don't forget to share. Go share.
Sharing is caring.
I know the feeling's getting heavy now, but we too far to stop this game now.
Come on. There you say hey.
Hello, everybody.
Not tonight. This is gonna be good. Not tonight. You don't want to miss this. This is getting ready to be absolutely awesome. And we'll tag this song at the end so you know who this is.
I know the feeling makes you special.
I was gonna put my church in. Tell you about their brand, their ministries, whatever they have going on. We have brands and ministries all sitting here. I'm sitting amongst great moguls, entrepreneurs, Renaissance people, business people, and I'm so excited. Ministers, they're changing eras, movers and shakers, world changers, and I'm excited to have this conversation with them. So I want you, when you get done with this conversation, you need to peep the game because they are phenomenal. I'm sitting among giants. And I knew we had to have this conversation, and I had to have it with great thinkers. So let's start with this is not a situationship anymore. Wow. So introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Anthony James. I'm the minister of the Millennial Ministry under Purpose Church, which is obviously under Pastor Latoya Central Barrett. So,
yeah. I'm Destiny. I am the finance director at Purpose Church under Pastor Latoya and Pastor Cedric.
And then tell them about your business because y'all need to look out for it. It's coming up during the summertime and you need to go ahead and get prepared to sign. So tell them about this business.
Yes, I am launching a new business called Provision. It helps you get your coins together, teach you how to budget, teach you how to strategize, and a wise person always leave an inheritance for their children and their children's children. So we're going to get you thinking, moving, shaking in that area. So coming soon.
So check out your financial coach. She's going to be amazing, and she is already amazing. If she does the finances at Purpose Church, you know she's got to be on point because Pastor Cedric Barrett is a CFO, and he does not play. And I'm going to save this one. This is my name, my blood. So we're gonna save him for last. I want these ladies right here. Their brand is absolutely phenomenal. Introduce yourselves. Listen, you better follow them. Come on.
Period.
All right, do it again.
Period. I'm Jill, Angelica. I am half of Live Light. Live Light is our journey to unpacking the heavy stuff, letting it go and living free. We talk a lot about mental wellness, setting boundaries, all that cool stuff outside of Live Light. I am starting a business called Time to Flourish.
Yay!
So it's kind of like a branding agency. So I help out with social media, production, all that cool stuff. So yeah.
I am Nadia. I'm the other half of Live Light. Outside of Live Light, I'm over the dance ministry at Purpose Church under Pastor Latoya and Pastor Cedric.
I love it. I love it. And then this is our baby. And man, you talking about a mogul, a Renaissance man, a wordsmith. He's crafty with his words and his thoughts. And man, when he puts his pen to paper, I mean, the sky turns red, the clouds turn purple. Fear have to move because my words become a gun. I mean, he is just a wordsmith. So, son, introduce yourself so that they can get to know you and your brand.
My name is Daniel Barrett. Son of Latoya Barrett. And
Cedric's Barrett. So
Cedric
y'all know well, it was out of wedlock, but either way, he is the baby. He is the father.
I'm the lead singer of Unity, which is a band from here, Wilmington, and I'm also a producer and singer-songwriter.
Yes.
So then I tell you, I'm sitting among moguls, and I'm so excited. They're millennials. They're fresh. They're cutting edge. They're thinkers. They're brilliant, and I love to have conversation with them. And Daniel wrote a song called "So Deep," and I thought that song was on the pulse of what we see in not just church today, but has been in the pulse of church every other age, but no one wanted to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And the last time we heard about it really publicly, that it would be able to resound in church, was with Solomon. And so I look at him as our new day, modern day Solomon, that he writes those challenging conversations that we don't like to have. So give me just a little bit of some of the verse of So Deep, and then let's talk about what brought you to that place.
I think so. Okay, I think So Deep in its totality was just a storyline of two sides in a relationship or a situationship. And it explains first the male side of it, because a lot of times we get into situations or we make choices that don't always benefit us. However, it makes us feel good, and so we go after that. But then also the second verse is more so about her being vulnerable with the male, and how she really got taken advantage of, and emotionally taken advantage of, and she giving herself to her first love, and he didn't do it right, and then here you are knowing the same information and knowing that you might have the same intentions.
Wow. So ladies, I'm gonna talk to the ladies first about this, because have we been there before? Yes. Have we been there before where you have been in a relationship that ended up being kind of like a situationship, and you're falling and you're trying to grip yourself, and to have a male be so intuitive to write about the emotional ramifications of being open too soon. Let's have that conversation. How does that look between males and females? Because we are already practicing for marriage. At 5-6 years old, we're like dun 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 dun, and my wedding will be like this, and my preacher's gonna be like this. This is the person that's gonna sing in my wedding. This is what's gonna happen. Blah 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 blah. And then when we come to men, y'all are not practicing that kind of conversation.
Nah.
And so immediately when we go into a dating situation, and we are attracted to you, and then you reciprocate the attraction, so we think, we begin to get into a sexual encounter. And this is, we have to be honest today, and I'm going to get into the word, but we have to be honest today that this is save and unsave alike. We all make decisions with our bodies and our emotions may not be there yet. So tell me, like, the what place of vulnerability did you have to be at to be able to look at both sides?
Man, it was that it was tough. Honestly, it was tough because I had to really look at myself in the mirror, and then I also had to identify how I actually felt, as opposed to what I chose to do. And I know that might sound
no, I understand it. I get it.
sound crazy, but I had a hard time with that. I had a hard time identifying, what are my actual raw feelings about something, right or wrong, and then what was the truth of the matter, and also what do you look like in that mirror, and trying to line, just trying to figure out how to line all of that up, because we all want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Right? But a lot of times, like, either A, we don't know, or A, it may not be right within us.
Yeah.
And so it brought me to a place of just, like, confusion because at first, because I was just like, man, like, how am I supposed to, go about this? Like, how, I grew up in church, and so I'm like, man, like, I have what is seemingly right over here, but then I'm also a young man, and I ventured outside of church, and I had these feelings, but then whenever I got into the situation, she really was the mirror.
Powerful in itself, because first of all, let's start here. How many of us grew up in church? I'm not a millennial, so I already know I'm not unaware. And so you said something so unpacked. And so I got a few things that I want to unpack out of what you said. First thing is, growing up in church, we see how many of us grew up in church, but yet and still, you get into a relationship, and the first thing you start the attraction, the communication, and then all of a sudden it gets sexual. Where do you go in your mind there? Like you're there and you're like, okay. I mean, come on, let's be honest. Most of the time in church, or people that go to church, somehow got sexual and didn't want to talk about it. So you stay there. So you stay there because you're in a hidden state. So talk to me about what does that battle look like internally, and then how do you get to a place of sobriety?
Depression. For me, it looked like depression. When I made that decision, because I lost my virginity late.
Right.
I was an adult, and I had never been with a person before. I have never dated before, and I identified myself by purity. So when I changed the definition by breaking the covenant that I had with God, I fell into depression and great shame, and it sent me on a 3-year spiral. So, and it only took, and then one thing people don't tell you is that you're not the only person that broke covenant, that your own personal promise that you made to God. So I thought, oh my God, I'm standing in this by myself. I was raised in the church. I was raised by pastors. And you mean I broke this covenant, and I feel like immense guilt. You know how they say you're going to hell with some gasoline draws on? I felt like even though you were taught church, you get the fire and brimstone, no redemption, no grace, no hope.
Right.
And I just felt like, if I'm going to hell anyway, let me just go hard. And that spiraled into drinking. It spiraled into toxic relationships. It spiraled into I felt like I was losing my mind because God doesn't love me anymore. God doesn't want me. He wouldn't choose me. He doesn't want to be in the same room with me. And at that time, I was in ministry. So getting up doing praise and worship, I'm like, I am going to hell. Leading all the saints to hell. It's just... And what really did it for me, I had great leaders.
you and Dad you drug me out of that, ugly place by giving me truth.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of leaders don't want to share their own testimony. Like, nah, Sister Kate, Daniel's out of wedlock. And,
and you know what? That's the thing that sometimes I'm so proud of your dad allowing us to have transparency. So there is a redemption story.
yes.
And we could care less what people think about us at this tune and in this phase of the race, is that it did happen outside of marriage. And so, but let me ask you a question. Did you all start to fight internally whenever, and did the fight, was it long, like you said, was it a long fight because of growing up in church and dealing with your sexuality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like Destiny said, like when you have to serve too, you kind of learn how to compartmentalize and put it in a box. And then eventually that box gets harder and harder to find. So it kind of puts you in a cycle of having to start over and dig into it and pull it back out, and then being able to feel okay to be transparent. Like some people aren't in places where they feel okay to be open about like, this is what I did. So yeah, I think that's where it starts.
Yeah. Definitely.
So the other thing you said is that I thought was like, wow. You said, I realized that the girl I was laying with was a mirror of me. But did the girl, because we as women sometimes, and I don't, I know your business, but I don't know your business because you're very private. So I don't know if she was a church girl too. But as a church girl, sometimes we're self-righteous. And so you're the filthy dog that took me down this place down this place for fornication.
Yeah.
And I was trying to please you, and it wasn't my own desire.
Yeah.
And but let's be for real, because a lot of times women don't want to say I had sexual needs either.
Yeah.
And so you were the thing that perverted me. But I willingly gave it. So was that something, like you said, and Anthony, of course you can chime in, was that something that you all seen as men that were Christian men, that you're looking at this girl saying, girl, your soul is a mirror of mine. We didn't both end up here because of me. We ended up here because of us. Either one.
For me, I didn't necessarily grow up in church. I was in church when I was a kid, but like when I started to get in like the teenage, young adult years, I stopped really going to church. But I rededicated in my early 20s. So, and then that's about the time where, I did ended up, falling in love with a church girl, and we did go down that wrong sexual path. But one thing I've learned about young men, when you get in that space where like you walk into young adulthood, like your mind starts to take on like different roles that you perceive. So even though, like you said, the female may think, oh, you took advantage of me, but at the same time, even if she doesn't say anything, young males often feel like in romantic relationships that like I'm responsible for who I'm in a relationship with. So no matter what they did, or no matter if y'all are right for each other, or any other variables that go along with it, it's always going to be, no matter what wrong either of you did, it's going to be I did her wrong and I mishandled my responsibility.
Let's go there. So where did that conversation come from, that a girl has opened up sexually to you and she went against the commandments of God herself by the authority of being able to be in control and to be able to make decisions? She made the decision to be consensual in that moment, and you take responsibility and guilt for her. Where does that come from?
You mean the responsibility part?
Yeah, the responsibility as a young man to wear that guilt, to wear that shame, that I went there with you.
We
You
being
wanna keep
frank.
going?
I feel like honestly, I feel like that comes from insecurity. A lot of insecurity on both sides, and I've had the opportunity to talk to church girls and non-church girls. So honestly, and honestly, at times they're one and the same.
I'm just looking at the camera.
Go ahead, brother.
And but also I think what was crazy was like he said, like I feel like I had to take responsibility for it. Like not even that I felt like I had to take responsibility for it, but I assumed responsibility for it. And when that's not even my place to do that.
Right.
Because like I'm the governor of like my own soul. Like regardless of if she she gave it to me consensually, and like she opened her legs to me and I got between her legs. And yeah. but
So deep.
But it like it still was her choice, and I tried to. I was wearing that on my shoulders all the time, all of that shame and guilt and responsibility. But at the end of the day, I assumed that role, and I was just carrying stuff that I didn't have to carry.
I think.
Hold on, let me.
Okay.
I want to chime in to this same conversation though. I think because it sounds like we went through a similar situation of taking responsibility.
Yeah.
It's really an innate thing in males to get to a certain point where because like God says, the man is supposed to be the priest over the home. They're supposed to be natural born leaders.
Oh, this is good. You just led to a good point. Keep going.
But the where the error happens is that we naturally have those abilities in those roles, like they're automatically going to develop in us. But when people who are responsible for us, they don't teach us how to manage our relationships, then we take on that responsibility whether you're in the right situation or not.
Yeah.
What I want to add to that though is when you as a church girl and growing up in church and you give yourself willingly to another, right? And your sole identifier is purity. And you have made that mistake. If you are not in tune, like I was not self-aware, I needed somewhere to place the blame. I needed to say, I went into this letting you know, no draws before marriage. And you have bamboozled me. And you never really, because you don't identify, you're not honest with yourself beforehand. Like, okay, I can be in this compromising. I can stay over a little late. You look a little good, but I don't have to date within a community. And because I got this, I have held on my virginity for 22 years. How dare you tell me that there's a possibility that I can fall?
Right.
And then when I fall, it's not my fault.
It was his.
It was his. And then we're trying then to make it right, to make it make sense. I have to put husband expectations on a dating or casual situation to make peace with who I am.
That's powerful.
And that's where I went wrong.
That's powerful. Live Light, what is your addition to this conversation? What would you say?
I think another reason why women place blame on the man is because, first of all, sex is really not talked about in church. So growing up, it was like, okay, well, sex is just to please the man. Okay, whatever. So if you have that mindset, okay, I gave it up just to please him. And so it's easy to say, okay, it wasn't my fault, I wanted to make him feel good. And then I'll say for me, I got to a place where I was insecure, and it was like the only way to keep him was to give it up. Like I was here for 18 years, and I was like, okay, I like him, he's older, cool, let's go. And so from that area, it was hard. Like getting back up. I mean, I was blessed to have you and Dad to be able to say, okay, Nadia, you failed.
Yeah.
But
Okay, get up.
it is what it is. So come on.
Yeah.
It's a moment. It's not a lifetime.
Okay. But yeah, I don't feel like for us, it's for our generation, really for any generation, it was talked about a lot. So there's such a fear mindset when it comes to it. And fear is the same thing as faith. Whatever you fear is going to come to you. So
Powerful.
the more that you fear having sex and becoming impure, the more shame you place on it, the more likely it is for it to come to you.
I think the thing that I look at, and I can't wait to have this conversation, especially when from a female perspective, I wish my husband was in this conversation now. I really do. But from a female perspective is, do you believe that generations before saying that if you don't have sex with him, this sex is for him, you not having ownership of your sexuality calls us to not have control of our sexuality?
Because if you don't have ownership of it, you don't have identity with it. So if you have no identity with it, then you cannot have control over it.
What happens if you felt because you wanted it, not because you trying to please?
Okay.
Well, but that's the thing. If you know, and she said, what if you fell if you wanted it, not because you wanted to please him? Well, we're gonna have to go here now. So I was trying. Hey, y'all, this is a late show. So, because a lot of times, what happens is you start out to please him. Then you find out how to do it.
Ooh.
Because the man don't know that at first it was about you. But after I figured out what I could do with this, now it's about me.
That's the problem.
But I'm going to let you walk away with the guilt of it.
Ooh.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Because the only way, the Bible says something, and I'm always going to do the word, but I love the word because the word kind of evens and settles things out for me. One of my favorite scriptures is 1 Corinthians 6, 18 through 20, and let me go find it and find it on my phone, Holly. But it says it says that sexual sins are unlike any other. And it says it like this. I read Message Bible. It says, there are more to sex than mere skin on skin. Sex is as much as sexual mystery as physical fact. As it is written, the two become one. Since we want to become spiritually one with the Master, we must not pursue the kind of sex that avoid commitment and intimacy, leaving us more lonely than ever.
Ooh.
The kind of sex that can never become one. There is a sense in which sexual sins are different from all other sins. In sexual sins, we violate the sacredness of our own bodies. These bodies that were made for God-given and God-modeled love, for becoming of one with another. Or did you not realize that your body was sacred, a sacred place, a place for the Holy Spirit? Do you see that you can't live however you please, squandering what God paid so much a high price for? The physical part of you is not some piece of property belonging to the spiritual part of you. God owns the whole works. So let people see God in and through your body. This is one of my favorite scriptures. And the only reason why it's my favorite scripture, because a lot of times we don't think about sexual sin as a conduit to our soul and control over our spirit. So how does your sexuality affect your spirituality?
So I've been there.
Yeah.
Because I feel like whenever I had sex, I felt like because I was in church, I felt like I had to make it work.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
And so I try to validate try to validate my action by trying to get it right on the back end.
Ooh.
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 And instead of just being completely honest with myself and my urges,
Yeah.
and saying like you yourself, Daniel, that mirror, like you have urges, and this goes beyond her. This is beyond her. She just happened to be here right now, but this is beyond her. And for a minute, it clouded my judgment a lot, because I couldn't tell what was for me, what wasn't.
That's good. So you're saying sometimes because of the institutionalism of church, of us all having to be the same and come to truth at the same pace and rate, that at times when you would come encounter your sexuality at certain ages, you didn't know how to deal with it because the church wasn't having a healthy conversation about it.
Yeah, I felt like I had to stay away from it more than I had to actually deal with it.
Yeah.
So tell me this: when we're saying the only conversation about sex is abstain, you need to flee youthful lust. How many have heard that scripture? Or it's better to marry than to burn. So how many of you committed to something long term? And let me hear you. How many of you have you ever committed to something long term and it really was a thrill? It really was a one night.
No.
Okay.
Because my experiences are different. I never really put ownership on him for my choices and my decision. My relationship with sex was different because I used sex to kind of like mask other things that I was dealing with. It made me feel like I was in control. And it kind of hid other insecurities. So for me, like, yeah, it's a different playing field for me.
So then there was an emotional emptiness that you were trying to feel artificially, externally, outside with someone else for a moment, that I can get this reaction for this moment, and then I got this high, and then I'm out. So how does that, now when we get into that situation, how does that look when God is calling you into a place of intimacy with someone, one person?
It's difficult because for me, I had to turn off being emotional with people, and as a woman, like, that's very hard to do because we are emotional beings, like we're meant to feel, and I just kind of turned it off so I could do what I was doing. So when it came to my spirituality, I realized that that's how I did God. Like, I would give him this level of my emotions, and then I would be like, oh, I don't do emotions, so I would literally like walk out of church because I had met my emotional capacity. So then I realized, once I kind of digged into my sexuality and got to the root of the problem, I was able to be open and free before God with my emotions. So yeah.
Now let me ask you, I'm loving this conversation, because when I was younger, we didn't have these kind of conversations. And as a matter of fact, I think that translated in parenting you to say, see no evil, hear no evil. You need to flee ungodly.
You better not.
And I think that put a wedge in our relationship as mother and son, to not be able to foster a healthy environment for you to talk about sexuality and spirituality at the same time. That you can say, Mom, I know I love the Lord, but there's something else, like Paul said, there's something else working in my members. I don't know what that was for Paul, but some of us, it is our sexuality that is raging. And is raging from an emotional emptiness. So let me ask you a question for all of you all. Have you had a raging sexuality from emotional emptiness? Something that you were really needing deeper, on a deeper level?
Ooh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll say for me, probably the most active, I'm gonna say, time for me was actually directly after a breakup. And this was somebody that I felt I was 100% like convinced I was gonna marry that person. And we ended up plot twist.
Yeah.
But I was so convinced that I was gonna marry this person, and then when it got to a breaking point where I didn't know what else to do but leave, especially at that time, I think I was 21 years old. I was still probably halfway into my Marine Corps career, my first enlistment. And one thing that I've developed from the Marine Corps is emotionlessness. So for me to have all those strong emotions from dealing with the breakup and the failure of that relationship, the one thing that I could do to avoid that was to, turn away from my emotions and turn toward promiscuous women. So.
And then would you say that the promiscuity that you dealt with at the time of the breakup of a broken heart was to really unweight yourself of the guilt that I didn't do it good? I feel like you felt like a failure in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. Because sometimes when we get in relationships and they don't work, we feel like a failure and we make a subsequent bad decision that kind of keeps you going down this downward spiral until you hit a bottom and there is no more really choice that makes you feel better. So how do you, after you've gone through, you made that decision like that, like you're going, okay, now I really done got myself in some jacked up situation, because your headspace is jacked up. Because now that you failed that relationship, and then now you have failed yourself physically, and then you failed God, you seemingly failed God. What do you do? What do you do? Where do you go? Where do you go in yourself if you feel like I failed a relationship, I failed myself, and I seemingly have failed God? What do you do?
One thing that I don't think young men really try to gravitate towards is somebody that you can be vulnerable with to counsel you. Because the one thing that kind of started my my transformation, because I've dealt with like sexual urges in negative ways for a very long time. A very long time. And it was one of the hardest, if not the hardest, battles of my life to get to a place that I am sexually pure. And so Pastor Cedric, who's like a father figure to me now, like just being vulnerable with him about some of the stuff that I did and the ways that I felt about it, he was able to take all of my emotions and my mentality and direct me in the right direction. And also let me know that there's nothing that I can do to make God not love me.
Yeah.
And so I from that, I think it started, it sparked the level of forgiveness that I was able to at least start to invite within myself.
Wow.
And it's funny because I was gonna piggyback off of that, because I had to let myself stay there, like in that emotional spot, so I can feel it. Because I think that's what we like. I think that's one thing that like the male community lack, especially African American. Like we lack that ability to feel. And I think what I noticed and what I've been coming around to is that like God is in that.
Yes.
Ooh,
Yes.
boy.
Yes. Yes.
Cause then you're able to be real and vulnerable. And what I realized is I didn't I had no idea what real intimacy was.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm trying to show intimacy the way I know how, or the way I feel, by the way I feel, but it's not like that. Intimacy is just invulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, like, I don't know, a lot of times I had to just sit in that, like, just sit in those moments, like, you know, like, you feel like a failure.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel like you messed up. So you feel like you're responsible.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you perverted somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes people be like, but nah, I'm good. Like, nah, I know I need, because she, blah, blah, and we start trying to nitpick somebody else. Like,
Right.
and she got
To
this
make
issue,
us feel better.
and he got this issue, she got this issue, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. But it's
Right.
like, nah, no, wait a second. Like, feel that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Sit right there.
And that's big, because I think that's what prolonged my process,
Mm-hmm.
is refusing to sit with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love to have control.
Mm-hmm.
And because I love to have control, I could make it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I was educated.
Mhm.
I was a virgin. I gave myself to you. On paper, I stacked the deck. Like, I don't understand. I can't make this make sense. I don't understand how he was so removed emotionally. I can't understand if I gave you something that's so precious and invaluable, I can't get it back. How do I explain to relationships that come subsequent that I gave them all. I gave myself
My precious,
away.
yeah, my precious.
And I refuse to sit with that. And I think that break that we had for almost a year, from May 2018 till about
A year and a half.
a year and a half, I was forced. He chose. I was forced into that traumatic, because I wouldn't let it go. I couldn't come to terms with the fact that I failed. I failed at relationship, and this broke because there's something wrong with me. And the greatest thing my leaders could ever do to me is, girl, wipe your face. Girl, know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what the Lord says about you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you how much you are loved and you are chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And that confidence and that intimacy that is built in with God, he double take. He said, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Because you did the soul work.
I did the soul work.
Yeah.
You did the soul work. Now, tell me, when you do the soul work, what does that look like for you all when it comes to sexuality? Because
Wait a minute. Don't ask that question yet. Hold on.
what does that look like? Let's have this conversation. When you really do the soul work, what does that look like when it comes to your sexuality? Yeah.
For me, because I feel like I'm still like working it out, like to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's looking yourself in the mirror, like actually telling yourself, okay, you have these sexual desires, like it's okay, the Lord put them there, you just can't act on them. And I think the next step to that is really having the conversation with like your family. Hey, this is what I'm dealing with. What did you deal with? Because I feel like a lot of times it does trickle down.
Yes, it does.
And to be able to look at them and say, okay, this is I'm feeling this. What you ain't deal with yet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's
Or what did you marry yourself away from?
Yes.
Because a lot of times we had sexuality discipline issues. We had sexuality discipline issues, but nobody told us that it was a discipline. It was just like getting fit. And if I don't want to be fat, I gotta train myself not to be fat.
Yeah.
So if I want to be in tune sexually, there must be a discipline that I put myself under to be able to discipline my flesh in my sexuality. A lot of times when you hear church, it's like abstain. Okay. And this was my problem growing up. Sure. But what does that look like?
Especially you have a soul tie. Now your appetite look real different because now you didn't quite know what you was missing. Now you know exactly what you missing. How do you manage that soul tie now? Because now you are bonded to that person, and it even showed up, and it didn't even have to be sexual. I could tell you when that man was at the door, at what time he popping up,
Right.
because of the soul ties.
Or even if you knew their ring on the phone, you know the ring on the phone that's, that's so and so, or y'all know the person how they getting ready to text you, and you know like, ooh.
I already know what you did.
and then you're going. Now what do you do? Because you said something that was powerful to me. Because a lot of times people talk about removing soul ties. But I happen to have been sexual with my husband, so prior to marriage. So I didn't want that soul tie to go, because I'm going to need that soul tie.
I don't want this soul tie to go. I'm going to need this soul tie.
So what do you do when you got to put a progressive soul tie on pause?
So let me ask a question that I want you to answer. Because I
Look, y'all said, I know you're going.
I didn't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, you going, yeah.
But this so this is a real question because I don't know the answer to it.
Okay, so y'all want me to answer this
Yeah,
question?
because I was told you need to sever, cut, and I haven't been able to sever the soul tie, even though we've gone into about almost 2 years of purity. Like, I still haven't severed. The attraction's still there. Our history's still there. So I think we have recycled it, but not like severed it.
But what you have to understand is a discipline. Sexuality has a discipline that goes with it. And you have to, I know one of my weaknesses is chocolate cake. It's like chocolate is a real situation. It's a situation. And so if I make it and it's in the house and it remains in the house, and if I know what triggers, because we have emotional triggers that create cravings. So if I had the trigger in my emotion that create that crave, I gotta remove myself. Because a lot of times they talk about, well, late at night you need to leave. Well, not all of us has that proclivity. Because I might not be aroused late at night. But you clean my house. Wait, that's an act of service. Whew. Wait a second, I gotta go. So you need to know your needs. You need to know your emotional needs. You need to know affirmation. Does that trigger a response? Because people, we always talk about triggers from a negative perspective. But what about the triggers that have a positive perspective? Like affirmation, acts of services, gifts. Things that trigger a response from you that makes you want to be intimate.
Right. So will proper boundaries sever a soul tie?
Proper boundaries do not sever a whole soul tie. It disciplines sexuality.
Okay. That's the part that I needed to hear.
No, it disciplines sexuality. So a lot of times we're thinking, I have proper boundaries and I still feel this about you. You said no. Daniel has all the way turned down. So I have another question for you for the panel. What do you do when it comes to you are a believer. You are a believer. But you deal with pornography and masturbation. Let's have that conversation.
I say talk to your leaders.
Talk to
Talk to your leaders because, I'm just leaving it there. Talk to your leaders because it's from that you get accountability. Like, I remember we had the conversation. You said, okay, well, we're going to put this app on your phone and I'm going to just know. I said, okay. Okay, that's what I thought.
I'm sorry.
I'm not scared straight.
That's my mama. I
But like you could maybe do it with Anthony.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? But it's accountability.
Yeah.
She said, I'm gonna stop.
Cold turkey stopping like that.
Stop.
We done say from that point on.
But masturbation and pornography is a real thing. And what happens when you, I mean, okay, that's what you grew up in. That's what you, I mean, I've noticed that when y'all were little, people would hand y'all pornography like on the phone, on the computer, like it was cartoon characters. Like, seriously?
Like with M&M's or something.
You know?
You know what I'm saying?
And so, really,
Yeah.
so what do you do? And a lot of times, let me say this, because we always steer pornography and masturbation to men. So let's change and flip the switch. How do women deal with pornography and masturbation?
Same way men do.
That ain't fair. That ain't fair.
No, but do you all have does it create an intimacy issue?
Definitely.
Does it create an intimacy issue?
Because pornography takes the intimacy out of sex. So definitely.
Explain when you say pornography takes the intimacy out of sex. Because some people feel like, you know, some married couples say, let's spice it up with a little pornography. And I can't wait to have this conversation with married folk. But
I'd watch that live.
but back in the day, people would do little things that they thought, well, we can spice it up with this, but it was a doorway out.
Ooh.
So
I think singles, I'm not married, would use pornography as, because sometimes people say if you do it by yourself, you're not really sinning. Right. So that's another, ain't that what they say? And I was just like, nah, fam. Because your appetite grows, your expectation grows, what you think your experience should be like, it just skews your perspective altogether. And you may not be like, I'm gonna watch it 24/9, but if your appetite, what do you do when your appetite is like raw, like you just like fiending like a crack addict? I mean, you know.
Y'all, we're just having a real conversation because I want you all to put your comments out. We're watching comments too, because they're gonna be here answering your comments. Because I'm trying to figure out how do we have this conversation with Christians when they don't want to say, I was fiending sex after I did this.
I was 22 years old when I lost my virginity, and it felt good.
I mean, it's supposed
and my
to.
appetite went from curiosity, because I don't know what it is, to like full blown. Can we walk down the aisle now to make it make sense because of your girl? And it really, you have to want to change. You have to want to have and be okay to have accountability. And some people are scared to have accountability in church because the saints, they talk about you, and they just put that business in front.
So bad.
And you can't never.
Well, you know what? But you know what I've learned. So let me tell y'all this: the ones who talk the most are the ones who have the most issues internally, because your demons reflect. It calls them to see their own. So I need to put yours on the front sheet so nobody will ever see me. So if I put you out, no one will ever see or know my private demons. And so you can never, when saints talk, you kind of go, oh, you dealing with that too? you need to just go ahead and look at them and go, oh, you did that too? And be okay with that, because a lot of times, like Jesus was so fly with it, because when the woman had the sexual sin of adultery, he looked at her and was like, okay, who without sin up in this piece?
Cast the first stone.
You know, y'all cast the first stone.
But that's so idealistic, though. You want people to respond. Oh, you deal with that too. When I lost my virginity, I felt deep shame. I wanted somebody to say, "Oh, you deal with that too." But someone actually looked at me and says, "Now you have lost anything extraordinary about you. Now you're just ordinary." Saints, relationships that I've had for a very long time. So how do you deal with church hurt on top of identity issues?
Well, I'm going to ask you a question, so let me just go here. If your sexuality was the only thing, your abstinence or your avoidance from your sexuality was the only thing extraordinary about you, then why get married?
I mean, I know better now.
Okay, because I was trying to understand.
No,
I'm not condoning an undisciplined life in sexuality. I'm not saying that. I am saying this is the dogma of church, the jargon of church without an emotional connection to humanity. If I am giving you dogma without connecting to you, then that's condemnation. And I'm not a son of Jesus Christ, nor am I a disciple. So then let's get back to reality. What did you come from?
Yeah.
What did grace have to rescue you from? So then once we get there, then we can have a real Christian conversation.
And that's what I like about moments like these and platforms like these, because when you're hurt and you're broken, I know better now. I'm about to be 27 in 2 weeks, you know?
Mhm.
But it took years out my life with negative thinking being that's my sole identifier.
Mhm.
So now that we have changed the game and the conversation with church, now we are liberating more millennials and liberating more people as a whole to be able to start having these conversations in your home with your children. But it wasn't always like that. So I also stress, find someone that you trust. And if it's not even spiritual leadership, which I would, like it to be, even a therapist, an unbiased party, because sometimes church folk, or from historically speaking, from when I lost my virginity just 5 years ago, chewed me out, dogged me out. Do you hear what I'm saying? Made me feel like I was this low.
Let's have this conversation. This is such a long and good, juicy conversation. Please, y'all tell somebody, like, come on live, because this is really good. I gotta ask this question because I know some of you are getting ready to come. I know some of you that's gonna watch this have dealt with this, and I know that you're getting ready to go, okay, yep, she hit another one there. There's that one. Can sexual abuse contribute to an indisciplined sexuality?
Yes.
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 How so?
I mean, because if you think about it, sex isn't talked about in church. So if you think about kids that get molested at like 7, 8, 9, they go a very long time with no type of discipline in their sexuality. So there are kids that like get addicted to pornography at 12 and 13, and then they grow up, and then what? So definitely yes to your question.
So what do you do if the root of your sexuality overindulgence or indulgence outside of healthy parameters comes from the root of sexual abuse? How do you deal with the root, the emotional connection to sexual abuse that keeps you abusing sex?
Well, first of all, like you gotta be self-aware to know that that's what you're dealing with. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with traumatic experiences, when you're in it, and a lot of times sexual abuse is when you're young.
Yeah.
So you don't really know that it's traumatic in a lot of cases. But once you actually get to a place where you're able to identify that, hey, this was wrong, like I was wronged, I was brought up the wrong way, I was compromised, like my sexuality was compromised from a young age, then you're able to actually shed light on that pain area that you're dealing with. And then once you identify something, then you can deal with it. But you can't deal with something that you don't see or you don't acknowledge.
Yeah. And I realized having tough conversations helped too, because like for myself, I was 7, and I just recently in the past couple of weeks like been able to go to my mom and say, okay, like, can we talk about this? So definitely that, and then being able to talk about and think about how you felt after you were abused, and kind of like draw a map of what stemmed from that moment. Because then it kind of helps you to, because if you were young like me, I was 7, so a lot of the things, like I've been doing it since I was younger, I thought it was just part of who I was, and then I had to realize that it was just a result of me being abused. So it kind of had changed my entire perspective of myself and my sexuality.
I think the thing that I think about is that for all of us, sexual abuse has different responses. And for me, I've been sexual abused several times up until I was 14. Up until the time I was 14, it caused me to completely go the opposite way of sexuality. So when my kids started to talk about what was going on with their bodies, what was going on with their attractions, it was grotesque to me. It was shut down for me. That part of my life, that part of my humanity was shut down because it was taken from me. And it was taken from me in such a brutal, harsh way. And so when you think about it, and really, to be honest, I always often tell my husband, who's pastor secretary, I often say, I can't believe I want to go back to church. Because at one scenario, my sexuality was taken from me in church. And it was taken in a church setting. And so when it came to, and what I was able to do was hide myself in ministry. And so as soon as that was over, I was able to clean myself and feel clean by hollering out, pouring out. You know, have you ever got to a place where you just feel like if I just get and I holler out, pour out, maybe I feel better about my body or about my sexuality. And then I realized that was masking a deeper thing that was going on internally. So a lot of times, just so I can talk to you from the generation before, your parents, and I am your parent, that the conversation had a gap because we dealt with sexual abuse differently. Our sexual abuse was don't talk about it, run from it.
See, I had two different responses. So when I was younger, I was abused, and after that, like, you know, I just ran to sex. Like, that's just what I did. And then at 19, being abused, I ran completely from it. I said, I don't want to be touched. Like, leave me alone. Like, I put on, like, an angry demeanor. Like, couldn't nobody talk to me at all. And I did like you did. I ran to church to mask everything I was going through. I said, well, if I could just throw myself in here, you know, the Lord is good.
Yeah. All day. But the demon is still raging.
Definitely.
In your head. It's still raging in your relationships. Because if anything gets close to the place of your abuse,
it's like
it's gonna hit your clincher. But for me, I'm a fighter, so it's gonna hit my fight. It's gonna hit my fight. It's gonna hit my rage. It's gonna hit my attack. And so I often really go back as a mother in my 40s, and I am so sad for my children because I didn't even think I was gonna do this, but I'm so sad for my children because of them not having that connection of someone saying, hey, I'm open to talk to. I'm open to receive whatever proclivity you have, and we can get through it. You're going to evolve through it. You're going to be okay. And God is very close and nigh to whatever you are at, wherever you are at. A lot of times my kids, I often made them feel as if he was absent from their sin places. Because sins done to them and sins they had done to others. And so they never could get the adequate healing they need or the adequate love they needed from the Father in their places of great disparity, great emptiness, great brokenness. They couldn't ever really get that wholeness. So I, as a mom, I often wanted to have a conversation with millennials about sexuality, a spiritual mother and a mother, about sexuality and that how the church shouted over real issues. And real problems and real needs and real things that we really needed answers from. And when Daniel wrote the song So Deep, I absolutely first of all, I absolutely love the song. Absolutely love the song. But I loved its honesty and transparency because it took us through a journey in a male's head that we as women didn't believe happened. We didn't believe that vulnerability could happen and that empathy could happen. We thought that a man would lay with me, he got what he wanted, and now I have to deal with the emotional side of it. But the truth of the matter is that man's emotional conversation with what happened in that bed with you was long after you, and it's staying with him long after you're gone. And I did not learn that until being on the journey with my son, who is now 23, about to be 24. Just going on this journey with him to be able to, and I thank God that we are able to get to the place where I can see him soul deep. And I can see him to the point where I can say, oh, okay, well, we're going to be okay. We'll make it through it. And then also being able to have the journey with you all, that it is, maybe some of you, it is soul deep, and then some of it is just conversation is rich enough to take me on the path and the journey to be able to say, okay, we can make it through it. This is not the end. Your failure is not lasting. And as a matter of fact, do you really see that this is a failure, or is it a lapse in judgment at the moment? And could you move on from this? And make you reasoning your way out and say, yeah, I've been through worse and I can make my way out of this. So I wanted to have this conversation that sexuality is not identity, and we give too much authority to sexuality.
Yes.
So it possesses our being 100% when it's only a portion of our life.
Right. That's good.
And so I wanted to, in this conversation, give people control to be able to discipline your sexuality. If you're married and you're in a wonderful, wholesome relationship, explore your sexuality. And I cannot wait to have this conversation with married people. And my husband and I have a transparent conversation with you all. It will heal your marriage. It will heal your marriage. It will heal your marriage because God has done it for us. But if you are single, you also can explore your sexuality in your mentality. And I learned that from my place of when my husband and I, we went through some situations in our marriage. And I realized, you was having sex for 20 years, girl. You can't do that now. You can't do that now. What will you do with your time now?
Yeah.
What will you do with your creativity now? And I became more versed in what was my needs.
Yeah.
What was emotionally, how do I connect? What was I deprived of that I plugged in sexuality through all of that, and really it became a filler and not an expression. And so I started to do the soul work so that whenever I'm able to express myself sexually, it's not just for him, but it's for me too. And that we could now be able to join into a union that is full of expression sexually. And so I love to have this conversation with millennials because of being able to explore your mental worth and your soul worth now. And then when you get in a relationship, and some of you are in monogamous relationships and you're talking, conversation is the best depth builder to prepare for a wholesome sexuality. A lot of times we don't think that conversation and connection is the best builder for sexuality, but it really is. Because what happens in marriages, after my husband and I, we had a wonderful opportunity. I wouldn't trade it. When we went through we went through separation, and I can't wait till we do the marriage version of this. And it caused us to build that intimacy through conversation. So we were no longer better married than to burn. It was less discipline because I need to know you. And so now we have such a rich relationship now that I mean, we desire each other. And it is because I get him, he gets me, we connect on another level. And so you all can have a more fulfilling sexual experience when you have a better social and emotional experience with that significant other, that person that you are getting ready to get in a relationship with. If you have more comments, and y'all have anything to add into that, y'all? What is y'all thoughts on that? Does that just sound like crazy?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think that sounds crazy.
I wish we had that conversation 5 years ago.
I know! I'm so sorry!
Promise.
I know! I'm so sorry! Y'all, we are always growing and we are always becoming better. And every day I wake up to live my best life.
Yes.
And so it gets better and better every day. And so I get more and more sound and come to a place of sobriety mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, and every other aspect. And so I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine because on a real, even though I didn't know all this information 5 years ago, I don't think I would trade my process. I am more in love with my best friend. I get to do life with him forever, and we are literally better people because of it.
Right.
I admire the man and woman that we are growing into, and we are consistently growing. And we've been through a lot now, Jesus. But it's beautiful. I can definitely see beauty from the ashes.
But let me tell you this: I admire the man and the woman that y'all have become. Not growing into, because sometimes we celebrate later and not celebrate now. And I rather celebrate now. Y'all have become so wholesome, so healthy, so whole, and it's beautiful. And then to see that you all are getting ready to get married, and so you become large enough for marriage. And that's, to me, is everything. That is, that to me is the pinnacle of maturity and emotional and soul work. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the man that you are. I'm proud of the covering that you've become. I'm proud of the wholeness that you have taken. I'm proud of the soul work you've done. And I'm just can't wait to see all that you do in this ministry called marriage. And I know you're going to do an amazing job. You have really changed your legacy, and oh my God, it's beautiful. You are a wonderful man, impeccable man. Your words have weight for me as a woman. And I think that what you're getting ready to do and what you are doing is magnificent. I even say for Daniel, amazing man. Mm-hmm. Amazing man. One of the most beautiful souls to be around. He's one of my favorite souls to be around. Because he's so vulnerable and so touchable, and you just got it. You just got it. And the world, whenever they really see all that you are, you own an era. You don't own a time. Your impact on the world will create an era. And I know it, because your soul is big enough to create impact. And that's why I believe that there was such a battle for you, because when you get to the place of clarity of the depth and the brilliance of your soul, you will live in such an impactful life. And I know the world will know Daniel Barrett after you're gone, just like a Quincy Jones or different ones like Ray Charles, different ones that have gone on. Their work still speaks for them even after they're gone on. Quincy Jones is still alive, but after they're gone on, after Quincy Jones' time is gone, people are still living up to the bar he set. And so I love your soul. I love these divas, these queens. I promise, let me tell you something. The soundness, the wisdom that come from you all, her brilliance and creativity, her agility mentally, I don't know a lot of people that has the agility mentally that I'm sitting there going, I'm head on. That's impressive. And to see the soul work and the vulnerability and the adaptability that you have to be able to become the woman that you are today, not who you're becoming, but who you are today, to sit in soundness and in peace and in your own wellness. I'm impressed to sit in this circle and to see you, and when you talk, it's full of wisdom, wellness, and wholeness. And then to see how you embrace yourself and embrace your security and your passion for people and their lives. You are like, when you come into a room, it's like a hug. You have hugged the whole room, and you have caused us all to elevate to another level. And I love being in your presence. All of you add genuine wealth to a room. And I don't want you to ever forget that. I believe that if we speak into the people in our lives with honor and with such value, it's easier to discipline our lives.
But we appreciate you, though.
Yes.
We were having a conversation the other day about how sometimes being in church, people can be really condemning, but it's the compassion that behind that that really gets you on track. So like, to be able to come to you and be like, look, I messed up. And I know, child, get it together. If you're like, okay, it's not the end of the world. And you're like, no, it's not the end of the world. And then you tell us how to pick the pieces up.
Yeah.
I feel honored to have that, because everybody doesn't have a spiritual leader that allows you to be that vulnerable with them. So I appreciate you.
Or just
Yeah.
she be knowing y'all. She be knowing what you
knowing
do
what
way
you
before you
knowing.
do it. And then like you about to open your mouth and you deliver correction with such love. And you knowing that you already know, you be like, child, just come sit down, grab a plate. I already know. Get your Go read Galatians 5.
You know that's not scripture.
Listen, write this stuff right. Just keep on moving.
Jesus.
And I love, this is if there's anything that you said tonight, the most freeing thing you have said is that your sexual is not your sole identity. And I think we get trapped in that mentality that our sexuality is our identity. So when we fall from grace, that we can never get back up. But y'all listening? There is redemption.
It is redemption.
Yeah, I think for me, what was amazing to watch was like your strength and how like you always had this strength, but you developed into it, and that was such a beautiful thing to see because like, you know, I've been there.
Day one.
Yeah, oodles and noodles.
You better know.
Make bed spring. You
Yeah.
know, like
Yes.
I done been there and just to see just how you were able to just persevere through a lot of things just spoke volumes to me, and it definitely was one of the things that I wanted to live my life by because, you know, no matter where life takes you and what happens in life, what you may do wrong and what people may do wrong to you, you know, it's always good to persevere.
Yeah.
And it's always good to show yourself that you're stronger than the last thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And to always grow and just evolve. And so I've always admired that and just wanted to live my life by that.
Yeah. Well, you do. You do. You do. You do. And I'm proud of all of you. I'm proud of all of you.
For me, what really blessed me was like your resiliency, because I mean, she talked about you know, when you went through your separation.
Yeah.
But when I came in the picture, it was literally at the separation.
Smack dab in the middle.
I came at the climax of like all the chaos,
Everything.
and then to see things
Yeah.
like start to develop into what it is now, it's like dang, like you, a lot of times when people look at a horrible situation, it's kind of hard to see a way out, but to get to that place where you not only out, but like you flourishing while you out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you taking over while you out. It's just like dang, like that.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Like that's what's up.
Wow. Yeah. That's what's up.
That's what's up.
I think your vulnerability through the whole process, though, is what got me. Like, to have somebody look at you and say, okay, like, it's not the end of the world, Nadia. I've done this too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just opened my eyes, like, okay, whew, we got this for real.
Yeah.
But being able to have leaders who are great leaders, who outside of church are great people, to be able to say, okay, this is who I am, this is what I've done, but that doesn't define me.
Yeah.
That to me was the biggest thing.
And for you guys to have to process in public and still protect us in private.
Ooh.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're standing and we're here now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Surely.
We're here now. This has been amazing. Thank you for joining us on Flourish Now.
Thank you.
Go check out all this brilliance sitting on these chairs, all this brilliance. Remember, this is finance director, but you know, she's millennial direct minister too with her to-be husband. You know, she tries to get out of it every now and then, and they oversee the millennial ministry, and I know that it's getting ready to be magnificent because of them two on this ministry. And then we have, she got It's Time to Flourish. She's got her production company. She runs media at Purpose Church. She is personal assistant. You name it. She does it all. This is a woman you definitely want to know, because I believe in my heart of hearts she is a budding millionaire. And it won't take long. I think it was just putting her hands on her brilliance and knowing that it is hers and it don't belong to anybody else any longer. So keep your eyes on her. I know this is the in-house psychologist, teacher, and extraordinaire, and I promise you want to keep your eyes on her. She's got some great things budding, as well as she does dance ministry at Purpose Church, but she also has some other businesses coming, and this is the Live Light team. And so, and that's why psychology is very big for her. That is why she talks about Live Light. You need to go check her out. And this brilliant guy right here, he just said he does music, but man, he's a coach. He is a mentor. He is a writer. He is a producer. He is absolutely a thinker. And if you need someone to help you even expand your brand, administrate something, push you, coach you, mentor you, be the ear that never goes anywhere, this is that person. Check him out, Daniel Barrett, on Facebook, Instagram, and then also his group Unity, which are amazing and extraordinary men that also serve alongside of him, spreading out good vibes, good music, and creating a whole atmosphere and a mood to grow and blossom and flourish mentally as well as in your life. This has been a phenomenal interview, and I will see you next week at 8 o'clock. Don't miss it. We got Pastor Erica coming next week, and it's gonna be amazing. She's talking about a confession, a singles confession, and we're getting ready to dive in her book. I wish she could come in my couch, but we're quarantined right now. So she's not gonna be on the couch. So come and watch. This is gonna be a magnificent interview. We got some more great interviews coming soon. Love you. Peace out.